When you think about your work and productivity, do you ever feel like you always have to stay busy? Like slowing down creates more anxiety than relief? Maybe slowing down brings with it the fear that if you pause, everything is going to fall apart. Or maybe you're feeling like every decision about your time brings with it a sense of pressure about money, stability, or your future. If this resonates, then this episode is for you because I'm going to be talking about how financial stress may be affecting your productivity. Welcome to the award-winning Grad School Femtoring Podcast, the place where first-generation BIPOC students and professionals can listen in on inclusive grad school stories and gain practical tools for sustainable success. This is Doctora Yvette Martinez-Vu, a certified coach, consultant, author, and speaker. I will be serving as your femtor, providing you with insider knowledge to help you thrive in grad school and beyond. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Grad School Femtoring Podcast. This is your host, Doctora Yvette. And yes, like I just mentioned, I'm going to be talking about the connection between finances, financial stress, and productivity. This episode was inspired by some ideas I gained from reading the book, The Trauma of Money by Chantel Chapman, where she explores how our relationship with money is shaped by our experiences and how trauma can influence our financial behaviors. What I want to do today is translate that into what it looks like in your day-to-day work. Before I get started, I want to mention a big caveat here. I want to be clear. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a financial counselor, and nothing in this episode is meant to be clinical advice. Please know that. What I'm sharing is meant to be more educational, and it's meant to be a starting point for you to reflect and for you to learn more. And again, this is not a substitute for professional support. I'm going to start by mentioning that one of the most important shifts in understanding we can make is that a lot of our productivity challenges are connected to our sense of safety. And I'm not going to talk about trauma here because, again, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a clinician. So I'm not going to cover any of that. If you want to learn more about that, definitely check out or purchase the book that I just mentioned. But I am going to be talking about how financial stress and how our sense of safety might be impacting our behavior, which will also impact your work. And this is why I get really frustrated when I hear from people who tell me that they've been told that they just need to improve their time management or they just need more motivation to get their work done, when in actuality, what they may need and what they could benefit from is a shift in how they relate to their work and the conditions around it. If you're first gen, or if you're someone who's navigating financial stress, or both, odds are your relationship to work is shaped by that reality, by the experiences that come with being first generation and the experiences that come with navigating ongoing financial stress. Now, going back to the book, Trauma of Money, the author, Chapman, shares that financial behaviors are often responses to traumatic experiences, and that those traumas don't necessarily need to be tied to finances to impact you. She also distinguishes between economic trauma and financial trauma, and she talks about economic trauma as reflecting ongoing conditions like limited financial opportunities or instability. This is all tied to systems, the economy. A lot of us are feeling it right now. And she also talks about financial trauma, and those are specific experiences like the experience of losing a house or losing major assets. That can leave a lasting impact on you too. And that's as far as I will go in terms of mentioning the book, because this is not an overview of the book. But again, if you want to learn more about financial trauma, highly recommend that you go and read that book. There's actually an entire certification around the trauma of money method, the TOM method. I know of 2 individuals who have completed this program, and it's been a huge benefit to their work. That's why I thought, let me just pick up this book and let me just read this while I'm on my spring break. And lo and behold, a couple things happened, including a dental emergency that triggered my own sense of safety and stability, especially financial stability. So it came in handy. It was very timely. And back to how I'm framing this information for you all. When you bring the idea of how trauma and stress influences our behavior, and when we tie it to productivity, this can look like maybe you find yourself overworking because rest feels risky. That's what I mentioned in the intro today. Maybe it can look like you're avoiding tasks because they feel really high stakes. Like maybe you've been avoiding studying for your qualifying exams. Or maybe you're just struggling to focus because there's just so much pressure about the future. And here I'm thinking about everyone who's on the job market, whether they have faced job loss or they are new to being on the job market. And it's hard to focus because of the stress that comes with the looming uncertainty around whether or not you're going to secure a job in today's really terrible job market. So these are all examples of, again, how trauma, stress, financial stress could be impacting your behavior and your ability to get work done. And they don't just impact you in that area. They also show up in other areas of your life. This might look like maybe all of a sudden you find yourself avoiding emails more than usual. Or maybe you're specifically avoiding opening emails related to billing, tuition, financial aid. Maybe you've been putting off doing your taxes, waiting to the last minute to do it, putting off checking your bank account. So every time you check, the information in there is a big surprise and alarming. Or maybe you might be delaying creating a budget because it just feels like too much or too overwhelming. And related to your work, you might be avoiding starting an application because that application is associated with an outcome that is really high stakes. Maybe you're delaying a project because it's tied to your ability to secure funding or it's tied to specific career opportunities. Again, you might be putting off emails to advisors or supervisors because they are the gatekeepers. These are all responses to feeling a sense of pressure and uncertainty. If you are listening to this episode and you have found yourself feeling like you're not making adequate progress on something, or you have found yourself feeling more overwhelmed than usual, please know that your patterns make sense given this context. So what can we do about it? First, notice the patterns. I'm doing this for myself as well, y'all, because you are not alone in feeling that sense of pressure and uncertainty around the world, around finances, around our work, around our sense of safety and security and stability. When you develop a greater awareness, that's a great starting point. You can ask yourself, where and when do I feel most urgency in my work? What thoughts come up about money or about stability in those moments? What do I tend to do when that pressure comes up? And then related, you might notice some parallels. Like you might notice avoiding the taxes or avoiding that major writing assignment because it comes from that similar sense of pressure. Maybe you're putting off your budget meeting with yourself or with the partner, or you've been putting off feedback from a paper that you got from a professor, or maybe you've been delaying financial decisions and that also shows up as you delaying career decisions. You want to start to notice, again, where are there parallels? Because in noticing, you're not changing anything yet, but noticing that is going to provide the foundation for you to then later on make more intentional choices and intentional changes. If you're feeling stuck in grad school or navigating a major professional transition, personalized coaching from a certified coach can make a meaningful difference. I offer one-on-one coaching for first-gen and or BIPOC graduate students and professionals who want structure and compassionate support while working toward important goals. Together, we can create action plans that align with your capacity, your responsibilities, and your long-term vision. Clients often come to coaching when they are preparing for major milestones like qualifying exams, defending a proposal, finishing dissertations, exploring new career paths, or building sustainable systems that work for them. Coaching includes live sessions, voice memo and email support between sessions, and access to a resource library filled with dozens of tools for academic and professional success. If you'd like to explore working together, visit gradschoolfemtoring.com/coaching to learn more and schedule a free consultation today. Okay, now that you've started to notice what is going on, the next strategy is to shorten your time horizon. What do I mean by this? Let's say you're experiencing financial stress right now. I know a lot of us are. That means that your brain is naturally shifting to worrying about immediate concerns. Again, we're thinking about basic needs. What do we need to do right now to survive? And when you are experiencing figurative or literal scarcity, or when you are dealing with limited resources, it can make it that much harder to think about the long term. So instead of trying to plan everything at once, just turn your focus to what is closer to now. You ask yourself, what needs my attention today? What is one task that I can move the needle forward on right now? That might look like, okay, just for today, I'm going to open my budget spreadsheet and review one of the categories. Or just for today, I am going to open up my writing document and I'm going to revise one paragraph of my statement. This helps you to align your expectations with what you have the capacity for in this moment. It also helps you to get out of your head and instead take action. And I'm not trying to say that this is what you should always be doing, because admittedly, at some point we do have to think long term, but it's a great way to get started on doing something that you've been putting off for a while. Another thing that you can do is to separate decision making from urgency. This is a big one, and this is something that I have had to practice for so long. To this day, I have to remind myself to do this. Financial pressure or financial stress can make every decision feel high stakes. You might be feeling like you need to respond immediately to an email about funding, say yes to an opportunity because it feels really important. Or maybe you are making decisions quickly because you're just trying to maintain a sense of control. I was that person too. I was once that person that used to check emails 24/7. I was that colleague who got things done right away. People could always count on me. I was always on top of everything. And none of that guaranteed any sense of financial security, despite my efforts. Instead, there was a lot of harm that came up, both to my physical and mental health, as well as my spiritual health, I would say too. So how can you change that? By creating more space between that sense of urgency and when you actually make a decision. That might mean pausing before committing to something. So maybe you give yourself a day or two to decide. Maybe it means practicing saying no. If you're someone who's used to saying yes all the time, if that's your default, practice saying no. You could even practice saying not yet to opportunities that don't match your priorities right now. You could also ask yourself, am I saying yes from a place of urgency or pressure? And what would this decision look like if I gave myself more time to think about it? This helps your decisions to reflect what matters to you right now instead of reflecting that feeling of pressure alone. Now, another thing that you can do is to use implementation intentions. What are implementation intentions? Tasks connected to money or high stakes outcomes often feel harder to get started on. And you can make it easier for yourself by having a plan in place. Again, that's the implementation intention. And in a seminal paper on implementation intentions by P.M. Gallwitzer, they found that people are more likely to follow through on things when they decide in advance when and how they will act. And this is why I ask my own clients whenever they say they're going to do something, okay, when are you going to do it? And then they'll tell me when. Okay, what time are you going to do it? And have you written it down? Have you scheduled it out? Because I want them to have a plan. And similarly, you could do it and you can add to it by making it as specific as adding an if-then planning. So what do I mean by that? That instead of keeping your plans vague or general, you want to think about it from an if-then perspective. If it's 10 a.m. on a Monday, then I will open my document and revise a paragraph. If I feel resistance to starting my application, then I will work on it for only 15 minutes. If I receive a bill or a financial email, then I will make sure that I open it and read it within 48 hours. This gives you a plan. It gives you a way to get started with your work because you're deciding in advance how you will respond to a given situation. And the last thing I'm going to say is that it's really important when you're feeling pressure or stress and you're feeling overwhelmed, you want to make sure that you create more moments of safety or groundedness in your workday. Because your ability to get work done, your ability to focus is all connected to how calm or how grounded you feel. And there's research behind why some of these changes tied to feeling more grounded can work. This can look like starting your morning slowly. This has been a huge game changer for me. I used to start my morning and first thing I did was jump straight to my computer, jump straight to my emails, and jump straight to responding to the most urgent emails. This was me in grad school. It's not me now. And now that I've learned that your cortisol levels peak within the first hour after waking up, I recognize that it's important for me to ease into my work instead of jumping straight into the most high stakes or high stress work that I have. Another thing you can do is to start with something that feels more familiar or lower pressure or easier to do so that way you can warm up, you can ease into your workflow. And if you want to learn more about this, this builds on the concept of behavioral activation that I've learned from my own experience with cognitive behavioral therapy, where small, manageable actions create momentum and reduce avoidance. I had someone ask me, why do you always focus on the baby steps? And at the moment, I couldn't remember the phrase behavioral activation, and I wished that I had because that would have helped me to respond back. Of course, I gave her an explanation, but it makes a lot more sense when you have a concept that you can then later learn more about. Another thing you can do is to take a moment before you start any task and just give yourself permission to check in with your body and its sensations and signals. You can do this through breath work. I do that a lot more than I do meditation or body scans. But whatever works for you, just a way for you to check in with your body. And this checking in is what psychologists, scholars, researchers call interoceptive awareness. And this can help you to calm your nervous system, to reduce stress, and to improve your decision making. Again, something that has been personally really helpful for me has been working with a somatic therapist and learning more about nervous system regulation. because that has taken my work to another level. So now I'm not feeling as chronically stressed as I once used to, and I have exercises and practices that I can turn to help me to feel more grounded. And I hope and encourage you to find what works for you as well. In addition to these things, I also want to encourage you to make sure that you are checking in with individuals you trust, to make sure you're getting support from a therapist to process stress, trauma, emotions, past experiences. And if you want to take it to another level, I found that a lot of people who have multiple forms of support from family and friends, along with a therapist and along with a coach, they tend to make the most sustainable progress. And I am a big fan of that because I truly believe that we should all have access to multiple forms of support. I know it's not always available to everyone, but if you can tap into some support is better than no support. So make sure you're checking in with others who can help you. All right, the last thing I want to say before I close is that if you've been feeling stuck in this cycle of urgency, of overwork, and working out of pressure and stress alone, these patterns make sense. They reflect the challenges that you've had to overcome up to this point. And there are things that you can do to break this cycle. There are things that you can do to develop a toolkit of strategies to help you better support yourself in the work that you do. If this conversation resonated with you and you want to learn more about the financial aspects of that and more about financial trauma, I recommend reading that book, The Trauma of Money. And feel free to share this episode with a friend who might also benefit from it. Of course, if you're looking for structured support, for accountability, for community, I invite you to book a call to learn more about my one-on-one and group coaching programs. I am currently accepting new clients. And that's it for today. As always, I will talk to you all next time. Thanks so much for listening. If you liked what you heard, here are 3 ways you can support the show. The first is to make sure you're subscribed and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. The second way is to get your copy of my free resource kit linked in my show notes. This kit includes tools, worksheets, and curated podcast playlists to guide you through applying to and navigating grad school. The third way to support my show is by joining my email newsletter, where I share key takeaways and additional resources. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.